Welcome to Paranormal or Reality. On today's video, we explore demonic attachments from around the world, from the Goat Man to a possible Zaza sighting. Join us as we investigate these stories. Now make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. Let's begin. 2016, early 2017, my mom moved into this very old home. It was built in the very early 1900s. She planned on renovating it. We only stayed in that house for 11 months. The first 6 months we stayed there, everything was fine. Nothing was abnormal about it, like I would think it would be. The inside of the home did look really creepy, but I didn't feel that uncomfortable staying in there. It was when I was home alone that made me scared. Now, January 2017, my mom had left the house that day to get me some birthday supplies, since my birthday was coming up. My brother and sister were at their other grandmother's house for the day, so I was home alone. Now, near the old staircase, there was this see-through door that led to this very old basement no one ever went in. But my mom always put her recycling bags in there to prevent anyone from going down there. I thought I saw a bag move in there, so I peeked closer through the door, and a bag slid down the stairs. I ran up the stairs, into my room, stayed in there until she had gotten back home. Now, my mom's boyfriend used to tell me that there was a witch that lived up on the 3rd floor, so I also stayed away from up there. I never believed him, until I heard footsteps from up there. I would hear these slow but loud footsteps from up above, so I hid myself in my closet. Now, the last thing that happened before we moved out was somewhat of a blur to me. We moved out March 2017, so roughly 2 to 3 weeks before we moved. I was sleeping in my room like normal, but I was woken up to the sound of scratching on the wall. We did have cats at the time, but this was long scratches. It moved throughout the outside of my bedroom. I used to sleep with my door open, so I didn't want to turn around to see what was out there, until I heard my sister call out to me. I turned around and called out to her. She kept saying my name. It sounded like she was going down the stairs, so I hopped out of bed to go see what she needed. Now, the outside of my room was a long hallway that led to the staircase. The staircase was one that would turn 180°, and there was a wall covering the rest of the stairs. I was too scared to go down the stairs, so I called out to her, but she never replied. I ran back to my room as soon as I heard footsteps downstairs, thinking it was my mom. But as I was about to close my room door, the footsteps were speeding inhumanly fast up the stairs. That's when I saw this long black figure on all fours taking a turn and running up the stairs at me. I slammed my door and hid in my blankets for the rest of that night, eventually falling back asleep. I'm glad my mom decided to move out of that house, because after that last incident, I never wanted to stay there ever again. Since these stories from that home have popped back up in my head, I decided to do a Google search on that old house recently, and the home had burned down a few years ago and was rebuilt. When I was 14 years old, I had a strange encounter that still puzzles me to this day. On the weekends, I'd sometimes go to my mother's place. My parents are divorced. The house she lived in was converted into several small apartments. It was a creepy old farmhouse. The house was at least 150 years old. My mom told me off and on about the strange sounds she had been experiencing, as well as seeing things in the corner of her eyes. This one particular evening when I spent the night, I brought my N64 because my mom would go to bed early and I'd still be up for a few more hours. I still remember to this day what game I was playing, WWF No Mercy. I was sitting Indian style on the floor playing the story mode. I just finished a mission in the game and placed down the controller to the left of me. Directly behind me was a recliner. I'll never forget what I saw next. As I went to grab the controller, I saw what appeared to be a hoof, like a horse next to the controller on the floor. Insects and blood were coming out of the sliver that separated the hoof. I slowly glanced up when I saw this demonic figure staring back at me. It leaned down towards me. Its face got down in my face. It grinned the evilest smile. His eyes were black, face red, with one wing on his back. Blood was dripping from the tips of its jagged, sharp teeth. It was so surreal, I immediately went into a panic attack and blacked out. I learned later it was the fight or flight response. Several seconds later, I woke up, laying on the floor, and could barely move. The demonic figure was in the chair laughing at me. It was as if my fear and energy had been sucked dry from me. I lost all strength. It was frightening. I can't put it into words just how bad it was. I did all I could do to crawl away from it while clenching my chest, with my body shaking uncontrollably from the fear and panic. When I looked over my shoulder, I saw the creature laughing at me. My mother's room was a mere 15 feet away from the TV, yet it seemed like forever crawling there. I did all I could to crawl to my mom's room and woke her up. I couldn't speak or stand up for quite some time after witnessing what I had just went through. After I woke her up, we talked. She believed me. She told me that her and her boyfriend had seen the same thing weeks earlier, but didn't want to scare me. I don't know what to make of it. I still think of it to this day. I have no doubt demons and angels are real. Believe me. The last thing you ever want to encounter is a demon smiling in your face. I don't care if you believe me or not, but when 3 people see the same thing on 2 separate occasions, at 2 separate locations, either we're all crazy or something was wrong with that old farmhouse. My mom told me prior to her moving into her apartment, her and her boyfriend had seen the same thing while they were living at my grandfather's house. My mom has thankfully moved since, and we haven't encountered that thing again. I have been asked over the past 6 years to retell this story over and over by airmen, so I feel it's necessary to share with everyone. We were stationed at F.E. Warren, which is a nuclear weapon-oriented base, to say the least. The weapons are always stored off in the middle of warehouse, with nothing but flat dirt roads and cornfields for as far as you can see. You could watch your dog run away for 2 days. Fast forward to my fire team talking up this haunted school less than a mile away down the road. I get amped up and persuade the FSC to let us off site to go to the school. He lets us go since he felt it was necessary to see this place. So, we prepare the trip by ensuring all our NVGs, thermals, and our flashlights were highly operational because someone said ghosts drain batteries. We hop in the truck and make our way. The first thing we notice upon approaching this old decrepit school was that it looks like something from the deep dark. It was absolutely screeching at us, so loudly that it almost didn't seem real. Turns out it was an owl in a pipe that was projecting his screech. My fire team partner Saldivar points out that owls are a bad omen in his religion. The only entrance point was the front door that's been busted wide open from all the storms. We enter into the main hallway, long, dark, dank, but definitely not alone. Immediately in front of us is the auditorium. It had a bloody owl shredded to bits in the direct center. The 4 of us are huddled together when my fire team leader Curtis sees something run out from the auditorium that we were standing in and ran down the hallway. Like a shadow, is what I remember him saying. We walked down to the end of that terrifying hallway and came to the entrance to the notorious basement. Walking through, I continually looked over my shoulder because something kept touching my neck softly. My spine is shivering cold, but my body was hot as fire. It made no sense at all. Blood is scribbled poorly on the walls, spelling out the phrase, "Get out." I try to act like this isn't terrifying and tell the boys to head up. We get to the top, and behold, there's a giant opened maintenance shaft in the wall, right at the entrance to the basement. That wasn't open. We walk back to entry of the hallway and attempt to turn on the devices we had. NVGs were at low battery already. This is where it gets weird. We're in a line formation, basically 4 guys in a row staring off into this dark, horrifying, long hallway. We get the thermals up and basically, we make out these 2 tiny glowing balls that are at the end of the hallway, just intertwining with one another. We pass the thermals back and forth, debating whether it's a spirit or dust picking up low light. We conclude that it was not dust, as we could clearly see dust around these glowing balls. The glowing balls stop moving and stand still all of a sudden. Thermals die, NVGs die, and from the deepest part of the hallway, a ceramic plate flies straight at us and shatters loudly at our feet. We panic. In the confusion, we separate. I bolt straight through what's left of the door, tearing it off the wall. Saldivar went to the auditorium, which was a bad idea. He doesn't come out for a solid 2 minutes. We all link up and absolutely sprint back to our driver, who was patiently waiting in the truck. Tell him to floor it. We're hyperventilating and can't process the feeling of terror we just encountered. Approach the gate to Golf 1. The radio starts acting up, changing dial to a static station, then cranking itself to the max. Now I feel that I'm a calm person and a rational human being, but I falcon punched that radio so hard, it broke. We get into the station and tell the FSC what went down. He notices that our gunner Saldivar is acting weird and quiet. We calm down and try to settle down for the rest of our 14-hour shift. After an hour, we all notice that Saldivar's behavior is now concerning. He was staring at a blank wall for more than an hour, just muttering. We went up to the FSC desk to let them know our concerns to him. I tell him that I'm not a religious person, but I think we desperately need to pray with him now. I think he is going to harm himself. Saldivar's a great happy dude. We knew it was the spirit. We walk out past 2 secured doors, then 2 separate rooms to see Saldivar slowly turn his head from the blank wall, smile, and say, "I don't want you to pray for me. I'm not going to harm myself." I pooped my pants right there. This was not my friend. It's not humanely possible to have heard our conversation. We get an alarm activation at one of our sites. Always a rabbit or something. I'm seriously worried. It's a long drive to the site, so I'm just drilling him with questions about what's going on, mostly met with hostility. While on site, I conduct the exterior walk around. This is where Saldivar, who's been watching us off-site at the HMVV with the thermals, yells at me to stop walking. That's when he tells me that there was a red figure following me. The crazy thing is thermals don't pick up anything other than black and white. The alarm gets cleared, so we head back. Saldivar snaps back into his muttering again. This continues until I get so uncomfortable that I pull the Jeep over and get out to talk. As soon as we get face to face, I put my hand on him. He has no recollection of any of the crazy stuff he's been saying. Shakes it off for the rest of the night and we move on. Finish shift, rack out. Woken up to Saldivar complaining about someone going in his room and trashing it, then beating the crap out of his back. Sure. Enough his room is trashed with the 3 other mattresses all over and his stuff just wrecked. I lift his shirt up, and he had some serious markings on his back, but we could tell these were not self-inflicted. I told my flight chief the story that day, and told him that if he ever tried to set me up for trip out at Golf 1, that I would be going AWOL. Saldivar is still a good dude and not possessed anymore. Guy had his grandma send him some stuff for protection, and that helped him get over this possession. Recently, I was asked by my cousin to babysit her 3-year-old daughter and her newborn. We'll call the 3-year-old JJ and the newborn JD for the purposes of this story. My cousin and I are very close. I was even a bridesmaid in her wedding. JJ loves me. We always have such a great time together. My partner decided to stay at our apartment for the weekend while I went to my cousin's. My partner and I have experienced many changes recently, including a new house, new jobs for both of us, the loss of a close family member. We have also been experiencing an escalation in paranormal activity happening at our new home. It had been quiet when we first moved from our apartment to the house, but in the last month, it has gotten far worse. Grief and changes in schedules can increase activity, or so I've heard. Getting out to babysit was a welcome change. When I first got to my cousin's apartment, everything was great. We caught up over tea as the girls slept for their afternoon nap. My cousin headed out around 3 p.m. and would be gone for 2 nights. She was worried because this was the first time she had gone away since she had JJ. JJ was done potty training. JD was 4 months old and bottle fed, so I reassured her everything would be totally fine. Her ex-husband would check in on Saturday to take the girls out for lunch. I was pretty experienced in babysitting. That night after dinner, and everyone was ready for bed, I sat up to watch some TV. I popped on some Narcos, then fell asleep sitting up. I woke up to a really loud commercial, only to watch the TV shut itself off. No biggie, it was a smart TV, it probably had a timer. Then I heard JJ. She was babbling away to someone. I could tell she was pretty unhappy with whatever was being said. Her voice was whiny and sounded like she was going to cry. I figured she was having a dream, so I went to check on her. When I got to the room, her light was on, which was unusual. The only light in the bedroom was a 5 foot tall floor lamp that had a button that was far too high for her to reach. She is only maybe 3 feet tall, and the button is located at least 4.5 feet in the air. There is nothing surrounding the light that she could have climbed on, or nothing she could have moved to stand on to reach it. She was crying and was motioning to the ceiling, saying, "Zaza, he scares me." No one she has ever met has had the nickname Zaza. I checked with my cousin the next day to make sure. I got her back to sleep, then shut off the light after trying and failing to get more information out of her. I decided to stay up a bit to listen for her getting up and fiddling with the light. It was around 12 a.m. now. I heard JJ moving around in her room. I heard something scrape across the floor as I ran to the bedroom. I opened the door and saw darkness. JJ was fast asleep with her face smooshed into her plush toy. Nothing in the room had been touched. I freaked out a bit, thinking I was hearing things, when I heard JD start to cry. I quickly closed the door so JJ wouldn't wake up. JD was absolutely inconsolable. She kept staring at the ceiling and crying so hard she could barely breathe. I saw in the corner of the room that her nursing chair was rocking back and forth. It was in the middle of the room instead of against the window. I moved it back and stopped it from rocking, then quickly grabbed her. We went to the kitchen. I just held her, not knowing what to do. I fell asleep on the couch with her in a baby bassinet next to me and woke up with JJ sleeping soundly next to us. That whole day I took the girls out, had some fun with them at the park, library, and a parent-toddler group. Their dad came to pick them up. I asked him about what had happened the night before. He knew that our whole family had had experiences with the paranormal for most of their lives, so he said it might be the close family member who passed just checking in with us. That put me at ease. I let him take the girls to lunch. I used the time to clean up the apartment so my cousin could come home to a clean place. I then took a shower to wash the child stickiness off myself. This is when I realized it wasn't my deceased family member. The family member who had passed away was not vicious and would never play a prank on someone if they knew it would scare them. While I was in the shower, a hand visibly touched the curtain and smacked it before dissipating. I cried for 2 hours until the girls came home and sat on the balcony the whole time. I was seriously contemplating packing everything up and taking them to my house. That night was pure terror, expecting something to happen every time there was a noise. I made up a bed for JJ in the living room where I was sleeping and brought the bassinet out again for JD. I cranked the TV and kept playing with the remote so the TV wouldn't time out. The girls seemed uneasy as well. Around 11 p.m., the girls were asleep when we heard the most awful scraping and dragging noise coming from the nursery. I told JJ to leave it and stay with me. I tried to ignore it, but it was obviously trying to get my attention. I turned around for 2 minutes to grab the girl when JJ ran into the nursery. I forced myself to follow after. When I got to the door, I saw a shadow in the corner of the room next to JJ. She was trying to reach out to touch whatever it was and was babbling away about wanting mommy. Then she said, "Yes, I am a good girl." As soon as she made contact with the shadow, I watched her ponytail swing back violently as if it was being pulled by someone. She flew backwards onto her back. She was screaming. I was screaming. We both ran to where the baby was to grab her. I drove over an hour with both girls to my house, to the safety of my partner. I took everything I could with me and called my cousin the next morning to let her know what happened. She was crying, said that she had had some scary occurrences lately, ever since our family member had passed. It only happens once a week or so, but she has apparently been touched by this entity in the shower multiple times, has seen it manifest in the living room and the girls' rooms. It is screwed with the electronics in her apartment as well. It's been over 2 days since I returned the girls to her apartment. She has had no experiences since. The girls are doing well and sleeping through the night. I hope it stays that way. The fact that the entities in our lives don't even leave little children alone scares me. I want kids one day. I don't want a baby growing up being terrified by whatever entity has latched itself onto my family. Thanks for tuning in. Watch another video if you dare.